Singing is good therapy, I find. Keeps me, my wind going. I'm swimming too. Kind of fell out of favor with swimming. I don't know if my granddaughters have ever seen me in a pool before swimming. And I'm still a little shy about it. Where I go, they say, water level's about to go up, and then they all get out. And I swim all by myself. But I have me some cool, very, very cool water goggles now. He paid a debt he did not owe. I owed a debt I could not pay. I needed someone to wash my sins away. And now I sing a brand new song, Amazing Grace. Christ Jesus paid a debt I could never pay. He paid a debt he did not owe. I owed a debt I could not pay. I needed someone to wash my sins away. And now I sing a brand new song, Amazing Grace. Christ Jesus paid a debt that I could never pay. Andy, let's look first of all at Romans chapter 4. Romans chapter 4, if you want to turn there in Romans chapter 4. I want to look at something. Our Wednesday night lessons right now, Andy Stanley is leading us, and he's really been helpful to me to make more real and more tangible how shocking the things that Jesus was expecting the Jewish people to do, or what changes that they were going to have to make in order to move into something new. Completely new. Andy stresses that a lot. And I think in due course, but perhaps sometimes too much. But God was always doing something for all mankind. He was always, when he started. And so, but when Jesus came, the Jewish people were locked into, we're the chosen people, and the Messiah is going to come, and when he does, boy, is he going to get you, and he's going to lift us up. It really brought a stark contrast. There, Jesus had just finished. They were on their way from Bethany to Jerusalem, where he would die. And the picture was painted for us, and it was very vivid. I appreciate it. They were no doubt in a caravan, among a bunch. Jesus had just raised Lazarus from the dead. He said, where we got to go to Jerusalem on the Passover? Why don't we just travel along with Jesus? That's bound to be interesting. Okay. So that Jesus kind of pulled his disciples over to a side and said, let's take a break for a minute. And he says, I'm going to Jerusalem. I'm going to be betrayed. The high priests are going to condemn me. I'm going to be flogged and crucified. And on the third day, after 3 days in the tomb, I'm going to rise. And it's just as if he didn't even say that, because the very next scene, James and John are going, we'd like to be the greatest. We'd like to be the greatest. We'd like to sit one on your right hand and the other on your left hand. And so, very, very shocking. They weren't thinking about saving the world or saving the lost or being a blessing. Well, everybody at the beginning, Jesus made a point that when he sent preachers out, he said, just go to the lost house of Israel. And there were times when Gentiles came to Jesus for help. And the disciples said, well, there's some Gentiles here who want to see you. Remember, even not Cornelius, but there was an unnamed centurion that came to him and asked him for help. And so they were beginning to, there were people besides Jewish people saying, you know, I don't think he's about being Jewish. I have a flare-up every time, and I try not to. But there's a show on cable called, and it airs often. I've watched it a little bit. It's called The Jewish Jesus. Jesus was born to a Jewish mother. Jesus was Jewish, and he followed the Jewish religion. But to think of Jesus as Jewish, or to think that understanding Judaism will kind of give you a key that unlocks the door of Jesus, it's just like a disguise he was wearing. It was like a hat he wore for a little while. And no, it is not the key to understanding who Jesus is. And so this show studies a lot about being Jewish. Thinking, yeah, but that's all kind of done and over with now. He used that and it's finished. But anyway, God was always doing something wonderful. And it came to, as Paul says in Romans 1, he says it's to the Jew first, but then also to the Greek. It involved the Jewish people. And so what we've got is that when people followed Jesus, they were Jews. And the early church, those 120 people in Acts chapter 1, were all Jews. And so here Paul is writing a letter to Rome and the Roman Christians there. And it was started by Jewish people, and it probably sprang out of a Jewish synagogue. But people who didn't even know what Judaism was began to hear about the story of Jesus. And as they began to hear the story, they said, you know, this is not about becoming a Jew or being Jewish. This is about the creator of all things, sent his son. And so in the book of Romans, Paul is writing a letter to a congregation that started out as Jewish and now is increasingly becoming people like me and you, Gentiles. But there's a mix. And so he says here in Romans chapter 4, verse 1, we've already covered this. What shall we say then that Abraham our father, as pertaining to flesh, hath found? I'd say it this way. What good is it being kin to Abraham? So he was saying, implying, some of your church members are, and they're probably very quick to tell you, we're children of Abraham. So what's Abraham got that we ain't got? If Abraham was justified in works, then he hath whereof to glory. He's got something to brag about. But not before God. He can't brag, but when he comes before God, he can't brag. What does the scripture say? Abraham believed God. Mary, the mother of Jesus, how did she get saved? She believed. And I know that there are self-serving people who would like to get an insurance policy against eternity and have no love for God and no heart for Jesus at all. I know that. But that doesn't change the fact that he's just simply saying, Abraham believed God, and it was counted to him for righteousness. The fact that he believed God, not anything else. All right, now let's go to Romans chapter 9, Andy. Remember at the beginning, the church had to decide, are all these people going to have to become Jews and be circumcised and everything? They're going to have to learn the law of Moses and everything in order to become a Christian? And they just said, oh, no. And God went to great lengths to help them along. It was difficult. Peter had to have that vision where he saw all those nasty animals coming down in a parachute. And the Lord said to him, rise, Peter, kill and eat. He said, I wouldn't eat none of that. There's possums in there. There's armadillos in that parachute. Shrimp, I wouldn't eat. I've never. He said, I'm a good Jewish boy. And God said, no, things have changed. Don't call common or unclean anything that I've cleansed. Because, you see, it was not just possums and armadillos that Jewish people thought were common and unclean. Thought people like me and you were. They despised Gentiles. They wouldn't speak to Gentiles. They wouldn't associate with them, wouldn't fellowship with them. I love that story there in Acts chapter 10 where Peter is going to the house of Cornelius. And Peter is being so Jewish and so rude. Let me tell you something. As I've been to the land of Israel, and I may be mistaken, and it may sound very unkind, but I have found that the people in the land of Israel, the most arrogant people I believe I've ever met. You hear people talking about how Americans, we're always shoving our Americanism, we're Americans up in their face, and about how we think Americans are better. We can't hold a candle to Israelis. They still look at you like you got a booger in your nose. You know, it's just like, what good is it? But there's still that sense. There's still that feeling that we're different. We're special. But Paul goes back and he works with the story of Jewish history. He said, you know, God just chose Abraham. And he said, Abraham, I'm going to use you to be a blessing. I'm going to bless those who bless you. I'm going to curse those who curse you. I'll give you just a little bit. I've debated about whether to tell this. If I thought the whole world was watching my videos on YouTube, I'm not hold back. Everybody that I work with in my new job is, and we have a core group that we do our job, and then there are lots of other people in the building and in the room where we work that do the same kind of thing on various levels. But all the people that I have been invited to be a part of are contractors, and we all are contracted by a different company. Well, the fact of the matter is that NASA has a contract with all of the contractors, and it's a government contract, and it says, this is what it's like. Now, if you were a recruiter for a contracting company, you would love to have a government contractor. It's just like a cow, cash cow. So there's money there, and so but they're very strict rules. And so that we have all recently found out that our contractors are not paying us what the government contract demands. It's a certain fee. So somehow or another, we all found out. It's like a prison riot, kind of a grumbling, you know, and people get, hey, you hear people kind of waking up. It hadn't bothered me too much. I've been thinking about my heart. I'm just so glad to have a job over there. You know, I just told Randy I'm living at home now. We talking about maybe we might get wet. I said, but at least I don't have to drive to Scottsboro. I'm so glad to be rid of them Scottsboro people. There's a bunch of bad people over there.
Watch it.
People from Scottsboro, man. That's a rough place to live. I'm just surprised I ever got out of there alive. We're untainted.
Look at it. You're pushing it.
Untainted.
No more food for you.
And there was this one fellow, he kept checking with me. He could tell that I was a little bit too happy. And he was getting a little, and you know, don't ever get righteously indignant for somebody else. I'm going to stand up for you. Let me do all my fighting for myself. You go on about your business. But anyway, you appreciate it, but you don't want to encourage it. And so he sent me a note. Said, I'm a little bit concerned. You don't act like you really own this as heavily as we are. I said, look, let me tell you something. I said, this may sound strange, and I don't know what your background is, but I said, you know what? In my life, and I said, I don't deserve this. I'm not telling you that I'm privileged or that that I'm better than anybody. It says, God always seems to bless people who bless me, and He curses people that curse me. He said, I don't have to worry about all that kind of stuff. I said, it's going to work out. So let the Lord take care of this. He always has in my life. I said, I don't have to look up to heaven and say, God, get them. I don't have to do that. Get him. I don't have to sick God on anybody. I don't have to get mad at anybody. I don't have to feel like somebody's my enemy. It's like Moses came to Pharaoh. He says, I don't really think you got the big picture right here. This is God's child you're messing with here. When Paul fell off of his steed on the road to Damascus, Paul said, who are you? And he says, man, I'm Jesus. I'm the one you're mistreating. And Paul was thinking, okay, when you're mistreating